everyone, welcome back in another episode of the Wobcast 2.0. We're starting a off-season bonus series of Wobcast 2.0s where we take a look at every position on the Vikings roster, assess what went wrong, what went right, give it a grade, and look ahead to see how they can be better in 2024. Welcome in, everyone. Today we're talking corners. To help me break it all down is my partner and co-host, Giles. Hey, partner, we know this is an important position, the cornerback position, and it strikes me, you tell me if you disagree, but it strikes me as a position where there's not a lot of gray area here. You look at the players on the position, and it's like definitely part of the solution, definitely some things that we can work on here and want them to be a part of it, and then definitely not part of the solution. This is a hole on the roster that we have to address. It wasn't hard for me to evaluate this, Giles. Now, I think part of that is because they're around the ball a lot. They're making tackles and are making plays on the ball, so we can see it. You don't have to do a ton of – I really hesitate to say this. You don't have to do a ton of tape study like you would with guards and centers, right? Yeah. And like inside linebackers and D tackles. Like you pretty much know – who's good and who's not good. So it wasn't an easy analysis with easy decisions to make, but it didn't take me long to draw some conclusion on this group for the Vikings.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely agree with that, especially with the Minnesota Vikings cornerback room. But with that being said, I do think there are some sweet spots in the Minnesota Vikings cornerback room that aren't necessarily obvious. That's are low-key strengths that maybe people wouldn't see at the first glance. And I think that is the true benefit of a Brian Flores defense, and the idea that a lot of defenses around the league, they have their starters, and those guys keep going until they're out of breath, and then they swap somebody in for a play or two, and the other guy catches his breath. And I don't think Brian Flores' defense operates that way at all. They are all built specifically on leveraging people's strengths and weaknesses, and there are some guys in our defense that didn't necessarily play a ton, but that were more or less specialists in certain categories that I think that we should discuss. But at the end of the day, I do agree this is definitely a crowded room when it comes to all the different positions across the Minnesota Vikings. Definitely a crowded room. So if a change is going to happen, players are going to have to be released or traded because it's a crowded room. And I think there's going to be a lot of splashes here for this next offseason. This is going to be a fun discussion then, because I think there are going to be areas where we're on the same page here, but we might have some divergent opinions too on some things. So let's get into this. I would describe it, now you interject where you feel appropriate, but especially if I'm off track or you disagree. I think it's a mostly young room with the exception of Byron Murphy. Now, Murphy led the team in interceptions, snaps, TFLs, and pass breakups, despite missing the final 3 games of the season. I don't love that he intercepted who he intercepted and not other quarterbacks. He intercepted Tyler Badgett, Taylor Heineke, and Jameis Winston. No one else. So I'd like to see, we got Jordan Love a couple times in there, and we picked one off of Jared Goff. I'd like to see that. But, a good season for Murphy. Got paid a lot of money, came in here and played well. And also a guy you can put inside and play slot. So I like that. So he's part of the solution. Caleb Evans started 15 games in his second year, 4th-round pick a couple years ago. Someone you can have on the team, develop, and potentially win with. Depth guys, Andrew Booth Jr., Joejuan Williams, Jalen Williams, who combined for 223 defensive snaps, a couple of handfuls of tackles and 3 passes defensed. Najee Thompson played 1 defensive snap. He's kind of a special teams ace for you, if you will, a core special teams player. Now, at first blush, sort of those blunt force statistics, the Vikings allowed the most receptions. They yielded the highest completion percentage, and they gave up the 10th most yards. Now, that is not just on the corners. Safeties are involved in coverage. Linebackers are involved in coverage. You need to rush the passer. But those are the blunt force stats. Not a great look. 7th worst passer rating allowed. Only had 11 picks on the season. Gave up, Keenan Allen, 18 catches for 215 yards. An underwhelming room from a production side of things, with inexperience as their only crutch. However, that inexperience and the potential that inexperience has is the silver lining and sort of the leverage for potential. So overall, I give it a pretty poor grade for 2023. I gave it a 4 on our scale of 1 to 10, Giles. But from a prospect standpoint, what it could be,
I think the arrow's pointing up, and I see this as a group that could be the most improved group in 2024.
Yeah, I think that's important to note. I think, getting directly into my grade, I gave this a 5, but mostly with the perspective posture of the Minnesota Vikings defense when it comes to the cornerbacks. Now, we'll get into my thoughts on which players I like, but to hint one of them, I like the future of Mekhi Blackmon specifically. He ended the year as a top quarter cornerback. He was 32nd out of 127 qualified cornerbacks in his rookie season. Right? In a season that he did not play CB1 or CB2, he was the CB3. And I think when leveraged, he did very well. He was the highest graded quarterback on the roster. Played 434 snaps still. Like he's 5'11" from USC, obviously. Hopefully we could pair him up with a few other USC people from the draft. I don't think we can get Caleb Williams, though, but we'll see. But at the end of the day, he did phenomenally. And I look at a pretty large resurgence in his second year that will increase our grade for the cornerback room moving forward. With that being said, I'm not in love with the rest of the cornerbacks on our roster. Didn't love Byron Murphy's performance, although he had some sweet spots. He did not play super great. Caleb Evans, I think he took a step back in this year. He was bottom quarter. I think he was the 99th graded player out of 127 qualified cornerbacks. So not in love with his performance. Now, like you're mentioning, I think the pressure rate, and there's obviously some issues that affected our quarterback room. But honestly, didn't love that. Now, when you look at some sweet spots, Jawan Williams, at face value, wasn't a great cornerback. When you look at most of his snaps, I think he played 56 snaps in total throughout the 2023 season. However, when you look at specifically when he played man coverage, he was the 13th ranked cornerback out of 127 qualified cornerbacks. So when it came to man coverage, he was borderline top 10. Now, in the rest of the categories was not great. Now, I think we talked about him before the season. He was definitely a bright spot of what we thought could be. Now, clearly he had some issues when it came to adapting to the complexities of Brian Flores' defense. Obviously, it requires a pretty big head to be able to operate with all the different nuances of what that looked like. But when it came to just matching up and going for it, he actually did pretty good. So if you're looking at a guy that can step in to do man coverage, if we do re-sign him, I'm willing to give that a try. Definitely a bright spot there. Jay Ward from LSU did okay. He only had like 35 snaps, but excited to see what that could be. He's a true cornerback safety hybrid, which I think definitely thrives in a Brian Flores defense, but definitely something to look at when it comes to the offseason. But ultimately, between Mekhi Blackmon, Jawan Williams, and Jay Ward, those are the highest bright spots in my purview. But the rest I am not necessarily excited about. Sure, there might be some increase in performance if you increase pressure rate. I think that'll naturally happen, but definitely not excited about the rest of that roster.
Okay. So I think that if we're operating from an optimal standpoint, like future state, this room is operating how we designed it. Mm-hmm. What that looks like to me is Murphy is your Nick, like your slot corner. I get it that you're paying him a ton of money, but he is, he's over the slot receiver. And if there is not a slot receiver and it's, they're in a two wide receiver look.
Yep.
I think you have a debate there on if Murphy's on the field or not, and that depends on the talent level behind him.
Of course,
Right now he's totally on the field, but I think from an ideal state, you might have Blackmon's elevated performance and then a new cornerback on there who you could put out there. That is future state. For now, Murphy's one of your two best. He's your best, probably. But I think ideally you want him to be like your second or your third best, and he's your inside guy, your nickel guy, slot guy.
Yep.
Mekhi Blackmon, I think, is an outside corner. Now, I think there's a hole here at CB2. It's really CB1. You don't have like an ace corner. I know you have Murphy, but you really don't have one. So I think that's a hole. I think that's you don't have that. You don't, and I don't think you have a guy who can be that. With all due respect to Mekhi Blackmon.
No.
So I think that's a hole here in the roster that you can consider in the first round.
Yep.
If you add that, even if you added a guy who's like a step better than Mekhi Blackmon, and you had that guy, Mekhi Blackmon, and Murphy with a Caleb Evans and Jawan Williams as depth guys, now I think you're getting somewhere.
I think you're getting somewhere now.
Yeah, I actually think you're onto something here, and I think that definitely gets translated into who is available this offseason, and specifically someone's available this offseason that has a overlap with Brian Flores.
Oh, I was looking for this, and I didn't see it. The best name, I want to know who it is. The best name I saw was L'Jarius Sneed. I see that he's free. Now, he just won the Super Bowl, and he's really good, so the price tag is going to be high, and I'm sure the Chiefs really want him back. The other two names I had on there were Steven Nelson and Stephon Gilmore. So Sneed, Nelson, and Gilmore were the three best that I saw in free agency, and I ended up thinking a different route was better, right? There's trade, free agency, retaining players, and drafting players. So I didn't think it was a free agent who was the answer. But who's the guy who you're thinking of?
So you're 100% correct in the idea that those three were the best three up until about a couple days ago. I forget exactly when this news broke. But the Miami Dolphins released Xavien Howard, their cornerback one. Now, I will say he won't necessarily come cheap. However, his last two seasons, he's kind of struggled in performance, if we're being honest here. Last year, he ended the year at a 55.1 grade. However, he has been under a new head coach down there. They're obviously a very offensive-centric team down there. They want to run the ball, or not run the ball, but be a fast-paced track meet team. But when you look back to when Brian Flores was the head coach over Xavien Howard had a 87.3 grade. When he was under a Brian Flores defense, he thrived. He had an 89.6 grade in coverage. Now, that'd be a little bit of an if here, but if you can get back to a true tandem there from a lockstep between head coach and cornerback, I'd be totally game for that. And because of his lack in performance last year, I think there's a chance he could come back at a little bit of a discount deal, so to speak, if you could get him in the Minnesota Vikings. But I'd be all about that. If he could step back into true cornerback one posture with that type of scheme, I think and you re-signed Deal, I think you instantly shoot up to an amazing offense, or a defense rather.
So I get it. It comes at a cost. Have you done any market analysis? What's the per year? What's the year one, year two cost of that?
So I'm looking that up right now. I should have came with that.
It's okay.
Yeah.
While you look that up, I'll keep going. As long as Giles doesn't come back to us here with a number that we can't get to, I don't know how, and if Flo signs off on it and he's like, this cat can play it, let's go get him. I want him. He does what he can do. What I'm going to ask this guy to do. Xavien Howard with Byron Murphy, with Mekhi Blackman, Caleb Evans, Joejuan Williams, Jay Ward. I mean, with one signing, you have taken an entire position group that requires a lot of bodies and requires high production for you to have good defense. You have taken that position group totally off the board in terms of having to address it in the draft with additional free agents. If you sign Xavien Howard, you are set at corner from a depth standpoint, from an ability standpoint. You are good, and you can just forget about evaluating them, drafting them, free agent. Like you're good. Move on to something else, and that's a big one to be done with.
100%. And he is just getting off of a 5-year, $75 million contract. He was making $15 million a year annually. And that is his past performance. Yeah. And he has obviously dwindled a little bit. So I think you can absolutely get it cheaper than that. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think you can get it 11 or 12 million, and I'm signing that all day long.
In 4 years, 11 million per, totally in on that. And I'll give him 30 million of it if guaranteed 30 million of it,
Exactly.
Oh, hell yes. That is really good. That makes me even more excited about the prospects for this room. Now, if anyone else feels this way about him, the price tag goes up, right? If any other team feels as good about him as you and I do for the Vikings, it might be 14 million. Who knows what it is?
Yep.
But there's just value in being like, okay, CB, line through it, done, moving on to the next position.
Yep. And not only done, if you can get truly back to that 89 grade performance, you're in an amazing posture. You didn't just elevate your cornerback play. You brought in a shutdown corner if we're truly getting back to that play. No, right. I think unless there's rumor that those guys don't get along, I believe that Brian Flores and Xavian Howard, that relationship will be another key to getting him in the room if you do truly want to go after him. Even if someone's willing to pay marginally more on another team, if he knows that he can get back into a scheme that he thrives in, why would he not want to come to Minnesota?
Yeah.
Really?
I agree. No, I agree with that. Now,
other than the weather.
Yeah, right.
What
do you mean? It's nice inside US Bank Stadium this time of year.
Well,
what are you
this
talking
is
about, guys?
true. It's supposed to be 70 degrees today. I'm all about it.
Yeah. So I don't want to temper the excitement for Xavian Howard. I just want to clarify. Like, I don't think Xavian Howard is like Darrelle Revis or Jalen Ramsey in his prime. I think he's just represents a significant improvement from where they currently are and from anyone else on the market.
Yep.
And even if
go.
No, go.
Yeah.
Okay,
I was going to say,
okay.
I do think he's a Jalen Ramsey guy in his prime. I really believe he's a top 5
but he's
corner.
not right, but he's not there anymore, right?
Yeah.
So
So
I'm not saying you just got, Revis Island. I know you didn't. I know you got something that's distilled down from his prime form, but it is still so much better than what you have and what you could realistically get.
Yep.
That it's worth it to me, and it's at a position that matters. We're not talking about an inside linebacker or your second safety, or a core special teams player that you're going to try and elevate up to be a starter. Like, this is an important position to be good at.
Yes.
And you are completely solving it. And there's schematic familiarity with the player and the coordinator. It's a total win if they can make that happen. I'm a huge fan of it. It's a transformational signing because it's no longer a thing that we talk about in the offseason about how can we get better at corner. We don't need to get better at corner. We already did. Let's talk about the next position.
Yep. 100%. And even if you lay out all the other elements that we've talked about this offseason of a priority, if you want to improve from your defensive line standpoint, and you get a second or two better when it comes to getting to the quarterback, which seems like a little bit, but a second or two matters. If you can get just a second or two better, and if you get a second or two better in the secondary in terms of holding up with your wide receivers, that's how you shoot up into a top 5 defense, in my opinion. Yeah. I really do. If you get a second or two better on both sides of that, that's where you're going to become an elite defense, especially with your play caller and Brian Flores.
Yep, agreed. Now, when it comes to the draft guys, Terry and Arnold is probably the best corner in this class, and he's from Alabama. Not a ton of corners going in the first half or even first 3 quarters of the first round, which is unusual because analysts and therefore teams are itchy to take corners in the first round. Very itchy. Like, people love taking corners in the first round, and they're just not getting mocked there, which tells me it's not a strong class, which is just another reason to be on board with going to get Xavian Howard.
Yes, 100%. Because you never want to put yourself in a point of desperation, right? Mm-hmm. And trying to overreach for guys, or I think the Minnesota Vikings have definitely proven over the last decade that they've had a need at corner and they've overreached because they knew they had a need, and then maybe overreached a little too much and obviously have wasted draft capital. So I think this is definitely a point where I'd be fully on board spending in this category because would I love to get a Snead? Absolutely. From the Kansas City Chiefs, he's a great cornerback. I would love to have him on the roster, but I think when you think about the positions and the people that we have to pay this offseason, I just don't think it's realistic. Yeah. Unless you're willing to deprioritize another space.
Yep. You're right. I agree with you. Man, I hope the Howard thing can work out. I'm definitely going to keep ear to the ground and see if that's something that gets whispered about and talked about. Man, that would be a big win for the Vikings. We have a schematic and a coaching category in these analyses, I should say. I think scheme is a positive factor here for the Vikings. I like the scheme. I think there is a very organized, detailed brand that is being executed here by Flores. So I like that. And I don't have any reason to doubt the coaching, the position coach, or the technique in general that's being taught. So I think scheme and coaching are good here. I think it's really a personnel and an experience thing for the Vikings in the cornerback room.
100%. Now, I will say, if you had to pick Xavian Howard or getting a tremendous defensive interior guy, I do think I'm going defensive interior, though. Now, I'd love to do both, to be very clear, because I want to make sure we're addressing defense this offseason. But if you had to pick, I think I would say defensive interior, because when you look at the schematic, like you're talking about, we are heavily reliant on zone coverage Although we do go man every once in a while, we are heavily reliant on zone coverage, and there's a lot of mismatches, and there's a lot of complexity that a lot of illusion of complexity, I should say. So if you want to really elevate your defense, you got to get pressure. So do I really want to pay top dollar for someone that's going to sit in zone coverage? Not necessarily, but I don't think top dollar is anywhere in the 11 to 12 million category. Yep. You can get a Xavien Howard for that. Let's absolutely go for it. Because at the end of the day, you want your secondary to be very smart, to be very cerebral players that can understand the complexities of your defense. And that's what you're getting in Xavien Howard. He's a very intelligent, matured player. So I'm all about that when it comes to matching personnel to the schematics that we're putting on the field.
If presented with that choice and you got to go one way or the other, I would take the elite interior defensive lineman over the elite corner in this situation as well. Yes. I should say over Xavien Howard in this situation as well. And what it comes down to for me, I agree with what you said, but also what it comes down to for me is, would I rather ask a great player out in space to cover a little bit longer? No, I don't want to do that. I want to ask not as great of a player out there to cover for a little bit less time. Yep. And you do that by making it a mess on the interior with your pass rush and all of that. So I'd rather what I'm saying is I'd rather get better on the inside with my defensive line and put less pressure on the guys outside than try and just get elite on the outside. Because even if you get elite on the outside with a couple of corners and a great safety, if you can't rush the passer and Patrick Mahomes has 9 seconds to sit back there, he's going to pick the elite guys apart. Even the elite guys are going to get picked apart. So I would rather be elite, up front on the defensive line, and the Vikings will get that way by keeping Hunter, but then by adding one of the guys who we mentioned in the earlier episode of the Wobcast 2.0 this week. DJ Reader is the guy we sort of focused on. But I as excited as I would be about Howard, I'd be more excited about DJ Reader or Christian Wilkins or someone like that. Which, hey,
100%.
Would Flores have some Christian Wilkins crossover? I wonder.
Oh, I didn't even put 2 and 2 together. Absolutely. Yes. I believe they were on the same team. Yeah. That could be very interesting. If you could get someone like that, and even if there's some other lower tier draft prospects or even free agency prospects, I think another thing that needs to be really emphasized is a cornerback's ability to blitz, because our entire defensive schematic outside of what we talked about is sending 5, 6, 7 guys, up, and sometimes they have to go blitz. Sometimes they have to be standing alone with receivers. So someone that is very versatile, I think, is incredibly important, specifically in this scheme.
He was Flores' first round pick in 2019.
Yeah, Wilkins I was going to say, yeah.
So absolute crossover there.
Could you sign both? Oh.
If you could, you should
Christmas.
Do it. So now I would prioritize Wilkins over Howard.
Yeah.
If I had to, but I'd be happy if the Vikings got either one. I think you'd be happy. Either one would be great. A great get for the Vikings.
Yep.
But we're supposed to be reviewing corners here, Giles, not interior defensive linemen. Come on.
Defensive interior on the brain.
Yeah. So I, as underwhelmed and not great as I was and thought the cornerback performance was for the Vikings last year, I look at them in 2024 and I don't think it's, I'm looking at dark storm clouds and the end of the world. I think there's prospect there to be better. And I think they need to get better. If it's the same next year as it was this year, it's a big problem for the Vikings defense. It will prohibit them from getting better as a team. They got to get better in this room, but I think the pieces are there to do that.
Yep, agreed. Yep. I think it'd definitely be an interesting offseason. I think if I'm making a projection, I think they're going to try to make a splash in free agency here. I really do.
Yeah.
We'll see.
We will see. The added cap room, which we talked about in the earlier week episode of the Wobcast 2.0, will help them with that. And they can actually help, even with like potential Jefferson re-signing, they can create some cap space with some other moves, some restructures, and maybe some releases. So, and look, I mean, it's a little bit like it's very much go time for Kwesi and O'Connell, don't you think?
I mean, my goodness, yes. It's going into your third year.
They're not new anymore. Yeah, they're not new anymore. Like, this is it. Shoot your shot, because you might not get another shot, right? I mean,
Yep.
if it's another non-playoff year, trouble. So you might be right there, Giles, that this might be a little splashy free agency offseason for the Vikings. So that's the cornerback room for the Minnesota Vikings. Anything left to uncover or talk about, Giles, on your side of things?
No, I think that covers it. I'm excited to see what this draft brings, free agency brings. It's definitely going to be a busy season.
Yeah, it is. We want to cover every position group here with these bonus episodes of the Wobcast 2.0 here in the early part of the offseason. We're going to stay on defense, and we're going to do the edge, like the defensive ends and outside linebackers next week as we go position by position and review the Vikings season in 2023 and give those positions a grade and look ahead and see how they can get better in 2024 and help the Vikings make that jump and recapture supremacy in the NFC North. So
there we go.
Have a good rest of the weekend, Giles, and we will reconvene next week for 2 more episodes of the Wobcast 2.0.